Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. We got a Friday afternoon edition, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern. We got Jeff DiMatteo. Jeff and I met on a 49ers panel show with TS Fantasy. Had some fun on that show. You can find Jeff at NFL_DiMatteo on Twitter. And also, excuse me, he's the founder of @Gridiron Ratings, and I believe it's also gridironratings.com. So welcome, Jeff. Tell us everything about yourself, anything you'd like people to know that I may have missed, and also anything you got going on coming up that you want to promote.
Well, man, tell you everything about me. Now that's going to take a little while longer than I think we had scheduled.
Well,
hey,
I like rainbows and butterflies and
yeah,
walks on the beach.
I do love sitting on the dock. I love being on the beach. Now, hey, thanks for having me on, Ted. I'm really excited to talk Niners. Right now, big time of the year. I'm relaunching gridironratings.com. I'm predominantly a fantasy guy, so I cover a little bit of all 32 teams. The Niners are my squad, obviously. I got the Montana jersey behind me, and as we look around, I'm praying to the football gods that Roger Craig makes it to the next level of the Hall of Fame voting. And got some interesting content coming here at the start of August. Hopefully the web devs have the site ready to rock and roll here in just a couple of days for me.
Right on. Well, fingers crossed on that. Prayers up for Roger Craig. He should have been in long ago. So hopefully those folks will get it right because, I mean, come on. The guy is the first ever 1,000, the first ever to score 3 TDs in the Super Bowl. I remember I've had Mark Adams on. He writes for 49ers Web Zone, and he's got his own podcast, The Mark Adams Show. And it's Mark with a C. And he came on, he was saying he interviewed Bill Walsh one time or talked to Bill, and Bill, or someone did. If it wasn't him, he was privy to it. And he just said, basically, Bill said that, we had Jerry, we had John Taylor, we had Brent Jones, all these super studs on that offense for Joe Montana. But he said, really, it never really came together until they had Roger Craig. That was the key to Rebecca. And it's kind of an interesting parallel to what's going on with the Niners now, having kind of the modern day Roger Craig or Marshall Faulk or LaDainian Tomlinson type of back, the dual threat Christian McCaffrey, who clearly once he joined the team last year, everything changed, right? I mean, well, not once he joined, because he joined with a practice and a half, and we played the Chiefs and we were banged up. We were missing some guys, and there were some guys who played who probably weren't ready to be back yet. So he only played mostly in the first half. And, he only had a practice and a half, so he didn't have time to learn the playbook. And so we ran out of plays for him in the second half. But once McCaffrey started, we went 12-0 with him as a starter, 4-0 with Jimmy, 8-0 with Brock, or 6-0 and 2-0 if you want to break it up, 6-0 to finish the season, and 2-0 in the playoffs. And so I really look at McCaffrey as the same type of catalyst for the Kyle Shanahan offense as the way Bill Walsh explained Roger Craig for his original West Coast offense iteration.
Oh, that's 100% accurate. I mean, it's a guy that can go between the tackles despite his size. For McCaffrey, that is. He's obviously Ayers a little smaller, 5'11", 205-ish. And, obviously an expert pass catcher. And that was the thing where when Roger came out of Nebraska, and I think it was 83, people didn't really look for pass catching backs at that point, right? Everyone was looking for a thumper. And to play in that era and to come out and go 1,000, 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, being a catalyst or even just being like such a key cog in that dynasty should merit so much more Hall of Fame consideration. So for him to get passed over again would be truly devastating.
No doubt. It would be brutal. And I just hope and pray that it doesn't happen. So obviously, training camp underway for the 49ers. And, while we're talking about Christian McCaffrey, I've been tweeting a little bit about him and Kittle in that they weren't very active in the first 2 practices. And the offense really struggled on Thursday in the second practice. None of the quarterbacks did well. It was Purdy's first practice back, so that's kind of to be expected that he would be rusty. But Lance struggled. Darnold had a couple nice throws, but not a real high completion percentage. And Brandon Allen had a high completion percentage, but they were a bunch of dump offs and check downs and quick outs. There was no impressive throws that he completed at all. And I was just saying, it's like, I think there was more Christian McCaffrey today, it sounded like, and I'm still waiting to get more reports and sift through them because unfortunately it was close to the public. So we're just waiting on the reporters. But, I was saying before this practice that, isn't it interesting that our offense struggled yesterday with no CMC and no Kittle, but then people want to try and tell me that Lance not having these two incredible difference makers is no big deal. So, it's like, oh, you need a running back and a tight end to do it. And my whole thing is like, these guys, I can say with, extreme confidence, you'd be pressed to find anyone who wouldn't say they're both top 3 in the NFL at their position. I would go higher. I'd probably say number 1 or number 2 for both of them. But ultimately, top 3 is easy. And it's not just how great Kittle and CMC are. It's what a drop-off there is to the next man up. You're talking Ross Dwelly. You're talking Charlie Warner, who, at least as of yesterday, hadn't had a catch this offseason. Tyler Croft, and we all know he was responsible for the block or lack of block. I mean, he blocked Hassan a little bit. I'm not going to totally blame Croft on that. Purdy held the ball a little bit too long.
Well, he thought there was tackle. Yeah. Hassan was coming off the edge.
And Purdy held the ball a little bit too long, and he didn't step up. So there's a lot of blame to go around on it. But ultimately, it was Croft's block. So that's some huge step downs. And then on the running back side, obviously you've got Elijah Mitchell, who, God, he's so electric when he is healthy. He's a better pure runner than Christian McCaffrey, but can't catch like him. And the big thing is can't stay healthy. So it doesn't matter what he can do when he's healthy. It's starting to look like he just can't stay healthy. And then, you've got Jordan Mason, but he was a rookie last year, and Kyle tends not to trust rookies, and TDP, who wasn't a rookie, but he was kind of underwhelming for a 3rd-round pick. It sounds like he had I was there. He had a great practice on Wednesday, the first day of open camp, but then kind of fell back to earth again yesterday on Thursday. I'll be curious to see how he did today. But bottom line is there's just such a huge drop-off between CMC and Kittle and the next men up that this has been my big argument for Lance. It's like we haven't seen him with CMC, and we've barely seen him with Kittle. When we saw him with Kittle, he played well. When he lost, the team was losing before and after he lost, and there's and then he's got the new mechanics. They're saying he's got better touch, better accuracy, better quicker release. That's clear. He's not looping the ball down below his waist anymore. It's staying high. It's a much quicker, more compact release. And so I just think we need to get him more reps. But Kyle apparently doesn't think so, because the last 2 days, him and Darnold and Brandon Allen are all getting sort of sloppy seconds behind Purdy, which is seconds and thirds, I should say. So it's a little frustrating. But sorry, I went on for a while there. It's probably a lot to unpack.
Well, so I wouldn't worry too much about all that stuff. So first off, it's the first few days of practice, right? So my background I know most people don't know who I am. So in my background as an undergrad at Iowa State, I worked on the football team. I was an assistant there, and I was at practice every day, understood how reps would get managed. And now granted, Iowa State football back when I was in college, because I'm an old man now, is a lot different than working with the 49ers, right? But the concept of spring and summer practices remains the same. There's a little bit of load management at play. There's a little bit of just getting guys, letting them work up a lather a little bit, right? And I would suspect, and I'm purely speculating like the rest of us are right now, that Lance's reps are going to come with more first-team people on the field as the offseason progresses. As we get closer to the preseason games, we're going to see more of those reps for him. Purdy's going to get plenty. Lance will get plenty. Darnold's going to get a few. And the narrative is going to radically change week over week over week. And so I'm not really that concerned about it. Really, for me, it's just a matter of, okay, where's the consistency? A lot of these guys, CMC, Kittle, they don't need a lot of practice reps at the end of July, right? Those guys are going to get ramped up right before, probably the second preseason game. They may not see a lot of reps before the first preseason game. They know the playbook. They're veterans. We're going to preserve their body, right? Just from, hey, we don't want a non-contact injury on July 29th, right? So let's try to preserve those guys, especially the guys like Lance coming off of an injury. You don't want to go from a broken ankle into a torn ACL, right? expect him to get held back a little bit. As long as he understands on the board what's happening and he's performing well with with some of the drills and things like that, and the timing is there and they feel comfortable, I don't expect to see him get a ton of reps with the 2s and 3s because it's not relevant. That's why Brandon Allen's there. That's why Sam Darnold's there. So I'm not too concerned about that at this point. I think if we get past that second preseason game, the game changes. And if Lance is still held back and he's still not getting reps and he's still not seeing time with the ones and they're holding him back that way, that's probably where we got to start ringing some alarm bells and starting to get worried. Because the 49ers didn't trade all the draft capital they did to not give this guy a shot to win the job. So
no doubt about it.
That's kind of when you think about it just from a pure business standpoint, ownership, player personnel, people at the top, they're all looking at this saying, look, you got to give this guy a shot because we gave up too damn much to get him. And we're not going to punt on him in favor of Sam Darnold, who we got for basically nothing, and Brock Purdy, who we got with the last pick in the draft last year. And I love Purdy, don't get me wrong, but
yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure if you're Iowa State alum, he went to school where you did, so I mean, you must love him. Yeah, it sounds like we're getting still a little bit of that clicking. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, I think my mic is rubbing on either the zipper here, it's rubbing on my beard. Sorry about that, guys. Let me see if I can adjust here. How's that? Is that helpful?
I hate to make you hold it, but yeah, that's perfect. Unfortunately, if it's not too much trouble.
Sure, I got that.
Yeah, and I try not to freak out too much about one day of practice. Like yesterday, I was feeling a little down about Lance having to split second team reps, but then hearing that he had to do it again today, and then then you tell yourself, Lance will get those first team reps when Darnold gets a break. But the way it's playing out, this is Darnold. It's not Darnold. When Purdy's going 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 out of 3 days.
Right.
But so he did yesterday and today. Well, tomorrow everybody's off. So that's his day off, is the day everybody's off. So then he'll be back on Sunday and Monday. So realistically, I think it'll be Tuesday before Lance gets first team reps again. And he'll probably have to split them with Darnold. I just want to see Brandon Allen take less reps. I don't think he's the viable option. I think we're wasting our time. I've never heard of, a QB2 competition with 3 QBs. And that's what it's starting to look like, or at least with 2 QBs. I don't know. It just seems really strange to me. I think you should, if Darnold and Lance are the ones you like, then give them the reps and give Brandon Allen enough. But again, it's early. Pads haven't come on. I get it. But also then people will say, well, I just trust Kyle. I trust Kyle. And I'm a big Kyle Shanahan fan, I'll say, in general. But I tell you what, I'm really falling out of love with him when it comes to QBs, especially when you start to put together the breadcrumbs of the history since he's been here. And, he passed on Mahomes for Cousins, didn't get Cousins. And then he said no to Tom Brady. Tom said, hey, I want to come retire. And, I grew up as a Niner fan. I want to come retire as a 49er before he went to the Bucs. Kyle said, no, we like Jimmy. The one that's not quite as, easily to define is the, Jimmy G as the bridge QB. I mean, we definitely needed a bridge QB for Lance, but I really think we should have picked somebody like Andy Dalton, where if Kyle wanted to swap in Lance and swap Dalton out, the locker room wouldn't have revolted over it. And we could have brought Lance up gradually instead of the sort of all or nothing sink or swim situation where he's either the starter or he's, a backup. And maybe we'll do that this year. I kind of am holding out hope that if Purdy wins the number 1 job, that we'll still do packages for Lance like we did to start 2021. But then even last year with Purdy, if we all agree that Purdy was, the best QB in 2022, what the hell was he doing as QB3 to start the season? So I have a little bit of lack of faith in Kyle to pick the best QB based on off-season workout programs. So.
Well, and some of this could come down to just maybe not everyone in the front office and coaching staff is entirely on the same page. So that's probably how we ended up with the Lance trade to begin with. You had to come up to get a quarterback, and all the writers were saying it was going to be Mac Jones, and everybody was wrong, and it ended up being Lance. But Kyle, and to a lesser degree Mike, kind of have a type, right? So RG3 was forced on them in Washington, right? They balled out with him. He did great. He got hurt, but they took Cousins in the same draft. And then they balled out
as a handcuff.
As a handcuff, 100%.
Yeah, because they were not convinced that RG3 was the guy.
Right. Exactly. And then Kyle goes off. He does his own thing. And if I'm not mistaken, the one year he was in Cleveland, that might have been the Josh Gordon year where Josh Gordon went nuts and like Brandon Whedon or whoever had the year of his life. And then he goes to Atlanta and he turns Matt Ryan, another pocket passer, Cousins, Whedon, Ryan. He's got a type. Now he gets Lance kind of, I'll say forced on him, but you get Lance, and then you've got Purdy. Falls in the same mold as the guys like the Ryans and the Cousins. I'm not saying he's Ryan or Cousins or he's going to be this, top level quarterback, but I'm saying that it's a type, right? A certain type of pocket passer that does certain things well. And so it's not shocking to me that Purdy is kind of this, darling of his at this point.
Yeah, no, it's not surprising at all. It's just disappointing because it's just like, to me, yeah, game manager, you can do well, you can win regular season games, you can make some noise in the playoffs, but I'm a pretty firm believer, especially nowadays, you need a real top QB if you want to be able to win a Super Bowl, or especially if you want to be able to repeat that the way Mahomes has. I just think it's pretty clear that defenses, they do pretty well in the regular season and early in the playoffs, but when push comes to shove, the refs tend to swallow their whistles and things. I don't know. It just seems like the top QBs get the nudge. Real quick, I want to say hi to some folks in the audience. Steve
Sure.
Supremo is in the house saying Sam area. I guess that's a play on Trey area. He's messing with me because I call him 6 Cent Sammy. I'm not a big fan of Sam Darnold. I feel like he can be better here. I just don't think he should ever be the starter, barring injury. Obviously, if Purdy and Lance both get injured, fine, put Darnold in. Sure. But I'm not wild about it otherwise. Jess from East Coast Red and Gold saying Ted. She has a great podcast. Usually it's Wednesdays at 5 Pacific, but lately it's been Thursdays at 5, so maybe they might have moved. Anshul Shah was on with me earlier. The Shaw Show says hello, Ted and Jeff. Steve Supremo in the house says Mitchell will be RB3 or RB4. No, I think Mitchell will be RB2 if he's here, but I just don't know that he'll be here. I think he might be traded. He's one of the people I pegged as a potential trade candidate, especially if it looks like Kalen Layburn. I guess it looks like Laybourne, but I guess they pronounce it Layburn. He's been doing really well, and if that continues, then you can't really hide him on the practice squad. You might have to move somebody ahead of him. And Mitchell, like I said, with all those injuries, makes him a potential person.
Don't put that mojo on me, Ricky Bobby. I got a lot of Eli Mitchell on my fantasy teams now.
Uh-oh. Well, I think he would do well on another team too. He's, like I said, he's a great pure runner. He has decent hands. It's just, it's hard to beat Kyle though with the way we block for our running backs and the way we disguise our plays, where we have these same formations and nobody knows if it's a run or a pass. So we catch defenses off guard, run, and all of a sudden run a pass play out of it, a play action, and just slaughter folks. Let's see what else. We had Steve-O said, scared money don't make money. We had the background noise. We got that solved. He said QB room is fine. Watch other positions. We'll get to some others for sure, but QB is usually the money one that people want to talk about first. He said Mahomes was 5 years ago. That was 6 years ago, actually, 2017. But five years playing. I guess people forget he redshirted his rookie season. I guess he said I said no to Brady, and I believe I was right. Steve-O, if we got Brady in 2020, I'm telling you, we would have at least one ring, probably two. I think we would have won for sure one in 2021 with Brady, and probably last year too, if we could, keep him healthy. Obviously, that's the trick. But him or Jimmy, that's a no-brainer. I'm sorry. As old as he was still much better than Jimmy G. Even falling off some. He said Purdy was QB3 because imagine the Heat starting that last pick in the draft. Yeah, that's part of it. But what I'm coming to realize, with this, I mentioned this tweet I made about Kittle and CMC and how our offense is struggling without them. Well, the second and third string QB has never got Kittle and CMC. And so, but our defense is super deep. And so, and they're even saying that this year, like Sam Darnold was quoted today saying, it's like, this D is so deep. I sometimes have trouble telling, the second string D from the third string D. And that's my point, is that our offense, while we have the best weapons in the NFL, right? You got Christian McCaffrey, you got Debo, you got Kittle, you got Ayuk, you got Jennings, Juszczyk, Elijah Mitchell. We have the best weapons group in the NFL, period. But you go beyond that, you're like Ray McLeod, you got Danny Gray, all those tight ends we talked about. You like Danny Gray?
I loved his profile coming out. Loved his speed, his agility. Thought he displayed really good hands. That was a guy I thought could make some noise as a late round guy. And we'll see. I don't think the jury's out on that kid yet. He's got a little bit of time to develop into it.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I like Danny Gray. I mean, the thing that I say about Danny Gray and deep threats, I mean, honestly, I think Ayuk is a deep threat waiting to happen. And Kittle, we know he's done a lot of deep threat damage. But you can't be a deep threat without a deep threat QB. And Jimmy G and Purdy are not deep threat QBs.
True.
And so that's my thing. And so, I'm going to defend Kyle a little bit last year for why he didn't pick Purdy to be QB1 or why Purdy ended up QB3. It's because Purdy's playing with the third string weapons against the third string D. The third string D is still really tough. The third string weapons are just I'm not gonna say garbage, but they're
for a reason.
Scrubs. Scrubs is a word I use for those borderline players that probably ended up on a practice squad or not at all on any roster or squad. So while I'm defending Kyle for that last year, I'm saying, well, then shouldn't Purdy have gotten some reps with the first team offense, right? So we could have found out how he was with these great weapons, because clearly as soon as he got in the Dolphins game, he was doing great with them. I mean, I was actually, you probably don't know this, but I was doing my first ever live stream of a game during the Dolphins game.
Oh.
And, Jimmy G goes down, he gets tackled. He didn't go down. Right. He walked off the field. He kind of limped off the field. And the next thing you know, and during the Dolphins series, the cart comes out for Jimmy. I'm like, oh God, they just carted Jimmy G off the field. I'm like, and that's after we had lost Lance early in the season, and we knew he wasn't ready to come back yet. And I'm like, oh man, is the season over? Do I want to even watch this game? Does anybody want to watch me watch this game? And then I was like, well, Purdy was accurate. And I kind of did the same thing. I was like, and he never had those great weapons. He never had CMC, and, he didn't have Kittle and Debo and all them. And so maybe if he's accurate, and, I know he's a little more athletic, obviously, than Jimmy G, who's pretty much a statue. And I kind of talked myself into staying on. I'm glad I did, because it was a great game. Some people came in and joined the stream. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, my point being is that Kyle should learn from his mistake last year, because it was a mistake to have Purdy at QB3, I think. And he should not make that mistake again with Lance this year, because Lance was a starter last year. Give him a chance to show what he can do with the new mechanics and all these weapons. And maybe that's what he's waiting until all the weapons are really, that's my hope. But it just doesn't seem like that's the way Kyle works. It seems like Kyle's just Purdy's number one, and, not going to even give Lance a chance to show what he can do. But again, it's too early to say definitively, but that's the feeling. Maybe it's a fear more than a feeling. I don't know.
Well, there's a couple of things about Purdy, at least in his pre-draft profile, that certainly would have prohibited, if I were coaching, right, just looking at it from a player analysis standpoint, that would have prohibited me from putting him in with first teamers or even second teamers. He was basically a borderline practice squad type of a guy when he was coming out. And, I'm an Iowa State guy, right? Hey, go Cyclones, right? That's my school. And, the problem with Purdy coming out is that he really struggled after that first year as a starter with accuracy. He didn't demonstrate next level arm strength. He had a couple little hitches and hiccups in his game. It was never about his IQ. The guy was always really smart. So, all the reports out of Ames made him be like this guy who was a whiz on the whiteboard. One of these guys that's like a coach on the field type of a player. You love that in a quarterback, but always the physical tools kind of held him back. And you're thinking about the Big 12, there's not exactly premium defenses there. And, so when he started to struggle, it tanked his draft stock, because he should have been a third rounder if he'd come out the year before. And then, he had a rough year. Cyclones struggled. Next thing you know, he slides down to Mr. Irrelevant. And I could see where that's probably what pushed those, Jeff Delta talks too much ball.
Stop talking about quarterback.
It's his show, man. No, but the thing of it is, there were some physical lapses, I would say, there that probably needed more development. And when he got thrown into the fire, his intelligence took over, and hopefully he doesn't fall into any bad habits. in year 2 as he's going through rehab and all that. But well, time will tell. I think the quarterback position is a giant mystery. There's a lot of speculation on our part and everybody else's part because Kyle Shanahan, if there's one thing I can tell you about him, and this is just me leveraging 20 years of experience watching his dad and Kyle's career and all this kind of stuff, is that he doesn't want to tell anyone anything. He is going to leverage subterfuge as best he can, and he wants you to think everything's going one way, so you start prepping and getting your team ready one way, and then he is going to flip the script on you at the last possible second, so you're just throwing all your paperwork in the air, wondering, what did you just spend all summer doing? So, I look at guys like Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan. These are the guys that they're playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and so it's really hard to trust things that even we're seeing right now.
No doubt about it. Yeah, Kyle, I love to say Kyle loves misdirection off the field almost as much as he loves it on the field. He will never give up any information until the last possible second. And sometimes he waits 5 or 10 minutes after the last possible second, and risks getting in trouble for it, with like releasing inactive lists or injury reports or anything. He absolutely does everything he can. And then what he also does, we've seen, is like they either leak stuff and these national guys like Schefter run with it. Like you mentioned earlier, Mac Jones at number 3, Trey Lance will be traded during the 2023 draft. We all heard that. And so either they're leaking things they want leaked, or like people get ideas and they run with it, and then he lets them run with it if it furthers his narrative or his misdirection, deception campaign. But as soon as it's something that like he wants squashed, he'll squash it. So it like that was the one I think of as the Darnold has the edge one, where they said Sam Darnold has the edge on Lance, and I'm just like, people are like, oh, they're going to trade Trey Lance, they're trying to trade Trey Lance, so I'm like, you wouldn't say that Darnold has the edge if you want to trade Trey Lance. That does nothing to help his trade value at all. You do it if you want to pump and dump Darnold. Yeah. You call him Steve Young. Like, I don't know if you saw that, but that came out recently. They were like, and I'm like, I hope this is a pump and dump situation, because otherwise I'm really starting to lose faith. And there you go.
You can't say it's a Steve Young. That's Super Bowl 29 ring there.
There you go. And that's what I wear at all these shows. Steve Young. Love the guy. Great quarterback and great guy. But yeah, I mean, to compare any of our current QBs to Steve Young is just, I see a little bit of like Lance could be someday if he reaches his ceiling or comes close. But Darnold, no, I'm just, until proven otherwise, like we said earlier, I think he could be better here, but I don't think like starter material. David McNiner's asking
forward when he came out. So
yeah, no, it's fine. McNiner saying, speaking of tight end, how is Braden Willis looking compared to Cameron Latu? Well, Willis had 4 catches yesterday, and Latu had 1 or 2. So Willis definitely looked better yesterday. But I would talk more about Wednesday, but most of the 11-11s were done on the far field. On Wednesday. So I really was relying on our other reporters for that. I couldn't see it very well myself. It just looked like a scrum from where I was for the most part. So, but I would say Braden has a slight advantage, despite being the 7th round pick versus the 3rd round pick, which is pretty wild. I would say that Dwelly, hasn't done anything special, and Warner, I think 0 for 2 on targets. I think he has 2 drops. So he might make it for blocking, but it won't be due to his hands or route running ability or separation. I think there's a reason why we drafted 2 tight ends, and I think one or both of those guys could be gone.
Yeah, my thought is actually both these guys are going to make the team. You're going to see Latu and Willis both. They're probably not going to get a ton of reps necessarily, but I expect them both to be on the final roster in some capacity.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, we might even carry 4 tight ends if we keep Warner. So we'll see. David McNiner also said 6 Cent Sam can't tell a shadow person from a receiver. That's why I call him 6 Cent Sammy, because he sees specters or ghosts and people, But no, I was thinking that when I read the quote, but I was also thinking earlier about how good our defense and deep it is. And so I think Sammy might have got that one right. Steve asks, you drafted fantasy before preseason is over?
Oh yeah, Steve-O. Oh man, I'm playing Dynasty, IDP, salary cap contract leagues. We're drafting in like April. Most of these leagues are for stakes, medium and high end. So some of the lower end ones are between $100 and $350 buy-in, and then some of the higher ones go to four figures. They can get pretty intense pretty quick. So we draft pretty early.
There you go. Steve-O said back a little while back, good play calling overcomes mediocre QB. Look at the last 10 Super Bowl winning coaches. Well, wait a minute.
There's a
I mean,
lot
I
of
would say
Brady
the
and
only
Mahomes Super Bowls
mediocre
in there.
QB that won a Super Bowl was like Eli, and even Eli is probably going to be Hall of Fame, but Foles, like that's it. Everyone else was like Brady, Mahomes,
And Foles didn't
Stafford.
play the whole year. Now he only played in the playoffs, and I think the last regular season game because Wentz was having an MVP caliber year. He goes
Right,
down,
right.
Foles takes over and takes him the rest of the way. So it's nice to get hot in the playoffs with a guy no one has any film on, at least no current film.
Yeah.
And but I could see the point to a degree when you think about maybe not Super Bowl winning coaches, but when I think about Super Bowl appearances, right? You start looking
Yeah.
around and you're saying, all right, well, guys like Foles has been there, right? He got the W,
Yeah.
cool. You want to go back a few years, you could find the guys like Matt Ryan, you can find the Eli's, you can find even the Cam Newtons, who I think Cam Newton was always a really good quarterback, he's a good NFL player, but he wasn't a great quarterback. This isn't a Hall of Fame guy when you mentioned Cam Newton. So, I mean, is there some great play calling
He
and
was just
great
a beast,
situations?
though.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a monster. I loved watching Cam Newton play. But you start thinking about it and you're like, do you need an elite quarterback? I mean, it certainly helps, right? But the guys that keep winning, Tom Brady got a gazillion Super Bowls. Well, he played at a discount for the bulk of his career to get other guys on the team. When you're married to one of the richest supermodels on the planet, you can do that, I guess, right? You're not too worried about it. Yeah, you get Mahomes, who wasn't a number one pick. He was a first rounder, but he wasn't the top pick. And they had him on a rookie deal. They just extended him. And so you think about, okay, well, you had two really top end quarterbacks playing at discounts by and large. That's a lot of Super Bowl wins in the last, 2 decades right there. Then you start looking at guys like Big Ben's got some Super Bowls. Eli's got some Super Bowls. Are these guys both Hall of Famers? I don't know. It's debatable, I guess. But I think there's an argument to be made in today's climate that you can win with a top half of the league quarterback, win a Super Bowl with one of those guys. But your defense, your run game, and your other weapons better be on point. No one has room for a bad day.
Everything has to be pretty perfect.
Right. Pretty perfect.
Yeah. Pretty perfect. No, I mean, I think Purdy could do it. I thought we had a 50-50 shot versus the Eagles last year in the NFC Championship game. If he stays healthy, figure whoever has the ball last probably wins that game. And against the Chiefs, I was putting us a little bit less, maybe 45-55 against them or 40-60. Still a healthy chance to beat the Chiefs, but not favorites by any stretch of the imagination, I don't think, against Mahomes. Sure. But I mean, I guess there are some average QBs that made it. I mean, Jimmy G made it, right? I mean, but come on, like Jimmy G threw 12 pass attempts in his last 6 quarters leading up to the Super Bowl. Literally, like against the Vikings, he threw it to Kendricks. Kendricks intercepted. He threw it to Kendricks 2 more times, and he dropped them both. So Kendricks could have had 3 picks in that game. And then Kyle said, enough. And he only had Jimmy throw it 4 times in the second half, so twice a quarter, and then 8 times in the NFC Championship, so twice a quarter. So you got 6 quarters, 12 pass attempts. It's historically low, other than Mac Jones in Buffalo, where he only had 3 pass attempts in the entire game.
I was like, yeah, like one completion in 3 attempts. Was
He was 2 of 3.
2 of 3.
2 completions. Okay. And people are like, but the win. I'm like, Josh Allen threw it 30 freaking times in that game. So, and granted, he does have one of the, if not the strongest, easily one of the strongest arms in the NFL. So.
I'm convinced Josh Allen can throw a football through a cinder block wall. So it's, I think that might be an exception.
He's incredible. The way he trucks people and just, I'm a big fan of Josh Allen for sure. I don't really have a second team, but like if I did, it would be the Bills. I like Josh Allen. I think he's better than Burrow, just because of the weapons thing. I think that Burrow. I say we have the best weapons group, but I say Burrow has the best receiver group in the NFL with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Boyd.
I mean, you can make an argument for the Dolphins, the Eagles,
Yeah,
like those are
yeah.
both two really killer wide receiver pairings. I mean,
But
there's a
the
lot.
Eagles only have two. They've got Goddard, who's great. He's kind of like Kittle light,
Right.
but they only have the two, and my AJ Brown and Devonta Smith that are really elite. But yeah, I guess same thing with Dolphins. They got Waddle and Tyreek. But
Mhm.
but Tyreek, he's arguably the best deep threat wide receiver in the NFL. So
What's crazy about him is that, we always talk about him as a deep threat because of his wheels. When you actually
yeah.
check out his yards per catch, take away the route, the yards run after catch, he
Oh
actually
right.
doesn't go deep nearly as frequently. So his air yards alone, he's not the deep threat that we all like to think he is, which is crazy. He's a catch and run threat, which is bonkers because he can
Like the
grab
13 seconds against the Bills.
Right, exactly. He can catch a 15-yard, post or something and take it for 65 yards any given play. And he does it so frequently that we're all like, "Whoa, look at that huge play. It's a deep route, big play." Really, he had, 17 air yards and or whatever it was, and then he took it the rest of the 50 or whatever on his own. But yeah, I think all those sets of weapons are incredible. But yeah, it's hard to beat, McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk, Debo as a collection of weapons. And if we can figure out how to block for them, I think losing McGlinchey hurts more than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
Some of his mistakes be damned. I'd rather have him in there than whatever else we're going to plug in this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Trent Williams isn't getting any younger. Like he's been an elite player for us last 2 years, but let's be clear, Father Time's undefeated. And so
Absolutely.
we've got to get some work done up front or this thing can come apart really quickly. And that's for me as a 49ers fan, that's my biggest fear.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of O-line. And I thought for sure we would draft somebody this year. But I guess there was nobody by the time we had picks and we didn't think it made sense to move up. And I guess it's not over. We could trade for somebody here before the season starts, or we could trade for somebody by the trade deadline. I'm a firm believer that 2024 first round pick will be a right tackle, whether we take him in the 2024 draft or, sooner, if that we trade for somebody. But I think they're kind of waiting to see where the needs are, right? They're going to see how McKivitz pans out. Obviously, we got to somewhat have to trust Chris Forster after last year because he came in and he said we're going to put Banks at left guard. That was a big question mark after losing LaDainian Tomlinson. We had Brendel replacing Alex Mack and Burford replacing who was our right guard. Blanking on it. But bottom line is three rookie, not rookie. Brendel's not a rookie, and Banks is a second-year rookie, essentially a redshirt rookie. But basically, three guys that had never really been starters in the NFL. And he said, we're going to ride with these guys till the wheels fall off, and the wheels never really fell off. One thing I'll say about Burford is, Brunskill platooned with him, so it's not like he was the full starter at right guard. But God, that's killing me. I can't believe I can't remember who our old right guard was. I guess it was Bruns.
We've shifted enough of them. Didn't we have 17 or 18 different O-line combinations last year?
Yeah, there was. Maybe it wasn't last year. I think it was 2020. We had a ton when Garland, our center, went out, and we had Brunskill in at center, and we had McKivitz in at guard, and man, it's killing me. Anyway,
they don't bring enough of the O-line transactions across the board on NFL Network. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's true. Yeah, it's not a glory position. There's no fantasy points for it. So they go large. Casuals tend not to, really care that much about it. They don't understand a lot of times the importance of it. They just look at somebody like, say, a Justin Fields, and they say, "Oh, Justin Fields sucks." And it's like, no, Justin Fields. Every QB needs at least decent pass protection and at least reliable weapons. And if you don't have those, you're going to struggle. Okay, it was Brunskill at right guard in 2021, at least according to Pro Football Reference. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm a big believer in investing in the trenches. We have no problem investing in D-line, The O-line, for whatever reason, we tend to kind of skimp. I mean, even if you look at Trent Williams, we got him for a third and a fifth. So even though he's one of the greatest ever, it's not like we spent a lot to get him.
Right.
The biggest one was McGlinchey, number 8th or 9th. I think it was 9th overall. And that's probably the biggest knock on McGlinchey, is just that he was a top 10 pick and played the way he did. But if you just look at him, he is a top 10 right tackle in the NFL. Great run blocker, and his pass blocking even got better towards the end of last season, I felt like. And granted, it's a contract season, and you got like those pictures of him getting, launched by Micah Parsons, but he didn't give up a sack on that play, and I don't think we gave up a sack in the whole Cowboys divisional game this last playoffs. There was one where Purdy got forced out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage, so I guess you'd call that a sack, but none where he was tackled behind the line of scrimmage. So yeah, I think we are going to miss him. And a lot of people malign McGlinchey, and I was one of them. I was like, I think this team can go as far as we can go. I just don't trust Jimmy G or McGlinchey back after Lance had gone down. And then slowly but surely throughout the season, I was like, McGlinchey, he hurt his calf in Atlanta or something. And that was one of the injuries that was lingering for the Chiefs, where, McGlinchey had a hurt calf. Trent Williams was coming back from a high ankle sprain. Bosa had a groin pull. Mooney Ward had a groin pull. Jimmy Ward was playing his first action of the season, essentially, with the club on his hand. Armstead was out. Dre Greenlaw went out in the second quarter, and then CMC basically went out of the game because we had no plays for him after we used the very limited repertoire that he learned in practice and a half that week. So there's a lot of reasons why I think a Chiefs-Niners game would have looked different. Also, Jimmy G was the quarterback against the Chiefs, and he had that horrible interception right before the half where we should have gone in up 17-16, and instead we went down losing 14-16. And then we kind of held tough even through the third quarter of that game, and then the Chiefs ran away and it looked like a blowout, but the game wasn't a blowout, at least not for three quarters. So anywho, that's a long-winded.
Did you get that off your chest? You okay? You feeling better now?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why when people say, "Oh, we couldn't beat the Chiefs," I'm like, I think we could beat the Chiefs. I maybe wouldn't bet even money, but I thought we had a fair chance to knock them off.
See, here's the thing: any team can beat any team on any given Sunday, right? That's why they play the games. And so, people want to say, "Oh, you can't beat this team, can't beat that team." Well, you're wrong. It's like any team can win, right? There's a reason why, you get these teams that go from worst to first and things like that. And, the 49ers against, the Chiefs would have been a pretty slick matchup if we could have had, two fully healthy squads, right? But let's not take anything away from how good that Chiefs team was last year. Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. I mean, this is a guy where even when he was coming out, he was considered a Brett Favre comp by most people. To me, I think he's actually matured past Brett Favre, where he's got a few more YOLO balls and a little bit more of the needs some luck to win, and he's matured into more of like a Steve Young type, where he can move a little bit. And I'm saying late career Steve Young, where he can move around a little bit, but he can rip it all over the field and beat you, with his mind and beat you with his tendencies versus anything else. And so that Chiefs team's no slouch. I don't want to take anything away from him, but McGlinchey, in the O-line and the things we would have needed to win, we needed McGlinchey to set that anchor better. He wasn't getting his butt down low enough. He was getting stood up, which is why he was getting blasted off the line by Micah Parsons. You popped this question up from Steve-O here. Every team has 2 to 3 weaknesses. What positions are you okay with, Jeff? Which positions am I okay with being weak? If I'm going to choose, I don't mind necessarily being weak at one of the 2 guard spots, because you can hide guard play with a good tackle and a good center. If I'm going to pick another spot to be where if I'm just going to punt, if you will, it's probably going to be like a Sam linebacker spot. That third linebacker, or even, it always depends on scheme, right? It's like in Steve Wilkes' scheme, I'm less concerned with a Sam linebacker. I'm less concerned with maybe the second defensive tackle, just because of the way he rotates. I watched a lot of Panthers football last year trying to figure out what the Niners are going to do this year. And I expect us to be in nickel quite a bit with that, that fourth guy on the edge, that fourth lineman, quote, being a guy that's kind of a hybrid linebacker type. We're going to see some more blitzing. We're going to see Fred Warner getting after it and getting after the quarterback a little bit. So he's going to be more of kind of that, that multi-use weapon. But I guess if I'm going to choose full team, give me one of the two guard spots I'll skimp on, and give me, I guess, the Sam linebacker are probably the two I'd be like, meh, okay, I'll punt those.
There you go. And you mentioned if you have a strong center and strong tackles to bookend the guard, but
Right.
I like Brendel. I thought we did well to sign him 4 years, 20 mil. I think that's a reasonable amount, but certainly not what top centers make. He had a lot of penalties, and he was not a very good run blocker. He did real well setting an anchor, as we were talking about. Did real well in pass pro, but not so much of a run blocker. And I think he led the league in penalties for centers. So hopefully he can clean that up a little. And maybe Feliciano will give him a run for his money. I haven't seen that come to fruition, but I know I saw one content creator say that they thought Feliciano and Brendel might have a competition at center. And I think part of the problem that McGlinchey had is just the dude's like 6'8" or 6'9" or whatever the heck he is. And he's kind of top heavy. He's got kind of pencil legs, if you will. And so he just doesn't have a low base to set, that, anchor in the pass protection. He just has a high center of gravity, and you can kind of fool him if you get him lurching forward or going back, then you can push him back the rest of the way.
Right.
So
that's a technique problem, though. So if you're 6'8" at tackle, just going back to, I've coached a little bit of ball, and I've been around some great O-line coaches, and you get a guy that big, and if he's having trouble getting, because really you got to get your butt down. Yeah, you got to have strong legs, but really the blocking happens. It happens in the back, right? And so as long as you've got some sand, you can generally hold your own. The thing with McGlinchey is that he gets stood up a little bit, and he was well coached at Notre Dame. Let's not make any mistakes here. He had
they crank out great linemen for sure.
Yeah, well, Banks and McGlinchey had both come from, and I cannot remember the coach's name, but he coached with the Bears and several other teams throughout his career in the NFL. So I mean, this is NFL level coaching at Notre Dame, and a lot of these guys are usually pretty good mechanically, but yeah, it's sometimes you just got to get that plant leg down. You got to get your butt down a little bit and kind of get in that squat position a little bit, and let that sand hold its weight a little bit, right? You gotta have the sandbags down, and if you can't get yourself down like that, bend those knees a little bit, forget it. You're going to get blown up all the time. But it's tough when you're trying to get wide, because you got to get width against a guy like Parsons, right? Because he's going to speed rush you to the outside. So you got to get a little bit of width. You got to get that deep step, and then you've got to be able to anchor. And when you anchor, you got to get your butt down quick, and you got to be able to explode into the guy's chest or explode into his shoulder and knock him to the ground, pancake him. So it's tough mechanically, and you've got to kind of be at practice to see it and be up close and personal with the guy. But I feel like McGlinchey's mechanics would often slide on him a little bit. And that's where I think the 49ers felt like, hey, it's probably time to just move on, because we're not going to pay a guy that has, mechanics that come and go. I love the guy. I think he's definitely better than what we're dealing with right now. But I don't know if it would have been worth the payday. I'd rather have Hargrave with that money.
Yeah, 17.5 mil is a lot. It's almost as much as we're paying Hargrave, no doubt about it.
Right.
Yeah, no, not worth the money. I was thinking 12 or 13 for McGlinchey. Was sort of my sweet spot, and I don't think that was ever going to happen. So as far as weaknesses, yeah, I think guard is one. I agree. I think our guards are going to be pretty good, though. I think Banks really showed out last year. Burford's rocked up. Supposedly got rid of some of that baby fat, got that man body, added some good muscle weight. Brendel, I have concerns about at center still. Hopefully he can do a little bit better. Steve-O did say that he only gave up one Saccaroni, so that's good to know. Quoting for Bosa, likes to call them Saccaronis. I agree with you. Sam, linebacker, is an area where you can skip, and that's why we let Aziz Al-Shire go, who's a hell of a linebacker. I think it won't really hurt us unless Fred or Dre get injured. And unfortunately, though, Dre does seem to get injured. Not a lot, but not a little either. And then one area, you mentioned nickel, playing a lot of nickel with Steve Wilkes. I have concerns about nickel corner just because Jimmy Ward was so phenomenal as a safety. He played really well as a nickel. He had 3 interceptions in the second half of the season. Like I mentioned, he came back with that club in the Chiefs game. That was week 7. And between week 7 and week 17 or 18, whatever the end of the season is, he managed to get 3 interceptions, and 2 of them were really notable because they came on Eric Armstead pressures. So one of them was against Tua, where Armstead applied the pressure and Tua threw it, and Jimmy Ward got the interception. And the other one was on Heineke when the Commanders visited, and again led to a Jimmy Ward interception. I forget what the third one was, but so that's a little bit of a concern for me, but an area where sometimes teams can skimp.
Just wait till Miles Hartsfield. There's Hartfield.
You like him?
I do.
Well, he's coming over from the Panthers. So
yeah, he
I thought he was more of a coach, though. More like, hey, he knows the system. He can explain it to the guys.
What was really funny is, so when I break down film, one of the things I like to do is I kind of just I take down, hey, how did they line up? And I write down the number of the player who was the best player on the field. Who's the guy that made something happen? And 38 kept popping up over and over and over again. And I was like, who is this guy? Because I couldn't think, because I was like, well, this isn't Chin, this isn't Luvu. Like, who is this guy? And he kept popping up for me. And I checked out, I was like, Miles Hartsfield, I don't even know who this guy is, but okay, I'll do some research on him. And I left him on the Panthers page. I didn't even know he left the Panthers. And so I left him on the Panthers page, and I started doing some IDP projections for fantasy. And I noticed that he came over to the Niners. I was like, oh, well, look at that. That's a pleasant little surprise. But he was predominantly lining up in the slot and a lot of those big plays. And, I suspect that he's going to share some time with Jair Brown, the rookie out of Penn State. And Brown's got a chip on his shoulder. That's a guy that was overshadowed quite a bit, in the previous seasons with, Brisker. He didn't quite do as much as Brisker had done, but he measures well. He plays the ball in the air well, and he can do a little bit inside and out. I wouldn't be shocked to see him in that kind of Jimmy Ward kind of third safety slot coverage kind of role. And that's going to be pretty exciting. I like both of those players. They're not going to be guys where we're like, oh, man, it's the next Ronnie Lott or the next, Ahmed Plummer, like someone we're getting really excited about, right? But it's going to be a dude that shows up, makes critical play on third down, gets us off the field, and we're excited. And then you won't hear from him again until he makes the next critical play on third down.
Nice. I know he's one of the fastest 49ers. He's like a legit 4.3 guy. I understand Hartsfield.
Yeah.
And like I said, he knows the system. It sounds like they've been talking about Isaiah Oliver, who's coming over from the Falcons, though, as the heir apparent to the starting role. And then so far in camp, which, again, it's early, so let's not make too many sweeping assumptions based on just 3 practices or 4, whatever we've had. Right. But it sounds like Quantrez Knight out of UCLA has been getting some backup reps. And then you mentioned Jair Brown. He's gotten a few at nickel. And so that does make sense. I totally agree with what you're saying. And so maybe later on that'll be more and more for Jair Brown. But a lot of us thought it would be Samuel Womack out of Toledo, but he's been getting a lot of run at boundary corner. Yep. It's basically like, Charvarius Ward and Lenore are the presumptive starters at boundary, but Womack is seems like so far through early through camp, seems like the solid first corner in the second team defense. So cornerback 3, if you will, for the boundary corners. Sure. And then on the other side, you got Ambry Thomas and the kid Jameson out of Texas, the undrafted rookie, who did well in OTAs and minicamp and whatnot. So Steve-O was saying the same type thing. He said he thinks 3 safeties overcomes nickel. He said Kinlaw 6 sacks. East Coast Niner in the house saying, what up, Ted? How's Kinlaw looking? Yeah, Kinlaw has been looking good, especially yesterday. He was one of the best players yesterday, but I'm loath to invest too much hope in him until he can prove he can stay healthy. But he's starting to look like what we all kind of thought when we took him 13th over or 14th overall. We had the 13th pick. We traded back 1 and missed Wirfs, which I'm still, boy, we're talking about right tackle being a question mark. How great would it be if we had just taken Wirfs instead of Kinlaw? I know one of the picks helped us move up for Ayuk, so we might have missed him, but T. Higgins was out there. And anyway, what could have been. You can do that a million times over with draft
You could
picks for
play
sure.
NFL on this one, and I remember we basically gave the DeForest Buckner contract to Eric Armstead, and then we traded Buckner effectively straight up for Kinlaw. And I feel like we're still net negative on that deal. I mean, yeah, if you could
Yeah,
tell me we weren't going to get Ayuk with that extra pick, okay, like all right, fine, then maybe we win with the Ayuk pick. But yeah, there was a lot of movement for about 2-3 years there where it's like we kept doing weird things like that and making trades, and I'm just like, why? It's like
yeah,
we're
yeah.
just taking these micro steps backwards, and it's like I get it, Buckner's older and all this kind of stuff, but man, he's been an absolute monster. Could you imagine a D line right now that had Buckner and Bosa, and then still getting Hargrave? You or I could line up at the other end, and it wouldn't matter. It's like we
I mean, I
would
like
be
to say
fine
I'm
with
kind
that.
of built like a D tackle. I'm about 6'1", 310. So, I definitely have a build similar to Hargrave's, big booty and thick legs. But I mean, obviously, I'm no Hargrave. But no, I think that kind of takes some of the sting out of it, getting Javon Hargrave. I think he could be our Charles Haley 2.0. Because remember how much it stung to lose Haley to the Cowboys, and they won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls with him. We just got the one where we got Dion, but then they got Dion and won the one the year after. I think he could be Charles Haley 2.0 for us. And Drake Jackson's looking good. Cleveland Farrell, I think, is really underrated. And then yeah, if Kinlaw comes along too, oh man, I mean, we're talking embarrassment of riches. Also, there's this Kalia Davis, who a lot of people are trying to say is like DJ Jones, like in his, combine stuff. Hard to say because he's coming off an ACL. But and then T.Y. McGill, I like too, the free agent we got from the Vikings, at least as a depth piece, maybe not as a stud like those other folks. Um, Real quick, just want to say, anybody watching on Jeff's channel, please come on over and give me a like and subscribe. And anybody watching on TED Talks Ball, please do the same for Jeff. That way, and also I always tell people, and man, I'm bummed I didn't think of this to the end of the show, which is if you're watching on a browser, just open up 2 browsers and you got it going. We both get the watch hours. It's like easy peasy, that way nobody misses out on viewers or anything like that. But anyway, and we
Oh, it's
are
like
running a
like
little.
personally.
There you go. Well, we are running a little short on time. I know we were going to try and keep it to an hour, but let's just go through a little few of these things here.
Sure.
So David McNair said Womack attack. Yeah, Womack's been playing really well. He had some nice PBUs. He almost had an interception when DFF tipped a Trey Lance pass. It was Trey Lance's almost interception from yesterday. I'd be surprised if Kinlaw makes it through the season. Absolutely. I never root for injuries, but I also don't ignore them, right? I mean, that's my motto. And, him and Elijah Mitchell, if either of those 2 cats could make it through the whole season uninjured, I'd be over the moon. I
Kinlaw
just wouldn't,
came in with
don't bet your
questionable.
rent money, I like to say.
Right. Well, don't forget now, Kinlaw came in with questionable medicals. Like, so that was all
Right.
kind of
He had tendonitis and arthritis in that.
right, and that's not a great sign when you're taking that guy in the first round. So he
No.
really he has to kind of work double time to get himself right. Steve-O he hates some Buckner apparently. I'm not worried about the Pro Bowls. I see what the guy does on the field. Sometimes the plays you make aren't the ones that end up in a stat sheet. That's the most important thing to remember. And Buckner is one of the best interior linemen to do it in the last decade and change.
No doubt. Just saying hi to Bebop. He's from the Philly area. Great guest or great audience member. And you said earlier it's my show, but honestly, I feel like it's my guest show and my audience's show, and we're all like a team. I kind of like to call myself the Jimmy Luggage of content creation, because like you're like my Kyle Shanahan and they're like my great weapons in D, and you all carry me and just makes it easy for me to do my job. So I appreciate that. And Steve-O said that Buckner was on a team that blew on a 33-0 lead. Well, not only was Buckner on that, but more interestingly, Matt Ryan was on that team. So 33-0 at the half is the largest regular season lead ever blown in the NFL. And then you give Matt a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. And I know people want to blame Kyle for that one because he was the OC. But I always say head coach gets the glory, head coach gets the blame. That's Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's defenses blow leads, not offenses. And that's a little bit simplistic because we all know, you can run the ball and use the time against people. Sometimes chewing time is more important than scoring points, and Kyle didn't do either in the second half. So I will give him some blame. But it is interesting that Matt Ryan was the quarterback for the largest Super Bowl lead blown ever and the largest regular season lead blown ever. And I like to say, Jimmy G was part of the reasons we've had trouble with Kyle. But it's like some part of me now, I'm starting to wonder, does Kyle even want a real quarterback, or does he just want these Kirk Cousins, Purdy, Jimmy G types? And is this just are we just going to be stuck with this forever? Because if it's me, I'm figuring out what you got in Trey Lance.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I've been thinking about it. No, this has been going on for a while. I mean, I'm a Shanna fan, but like how he handles this whole situation, I'm never said fire Kyle, but I'm not going to say I will never say it because,
Sure.
I'm starting to get to that point where I'm like, the NFC Championship is great. I love being a contender. I know that it helps you get players. Players want to play for contenders. So all that, like, it's all or nothing. I don't believe in that. But at the same time, like, you just get tired of coming up short. And at some point, it's just like scrap it all and start over. You just get that quarterback and build around them. And the coach that wants that quarterback, right? I mean, because it just seems like that's what all the top teams are doing.
That's how you end up with Jim Druckenmiller and Giovanni Carmazzi. You got to be careful. You be careful what you wish for.
That's true. That's true.
I'm still burned in my soul from some of those years. I'm old enough to remember very vividly us drafting Jim Druckenmiller over Jake Plummer. I wanted Jake Plummer in San Francisco so bad I could taste it, and we passed.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan since '76, so I've seen it all. Watched all 5 Super Bowls that they ever played, went to all 5 parades, and I just want another one. And I'm almost to the point of like, hey, do a Rams, go all in, get us our Von Miller or Yannick Ngakoue or whoever that is, and get us a Mahler right tackle and mortgage the future just like we did for Trey Lance and make it happen this season. And if we're bad for a few years, I'm fine with that to get that ring because we think we're set up to contend for several years. It looks like 2-3 years at least, but you never know. You could have an injury. Someone could just, regress. There's no guarantees in this league. So I don't know. I'm starting to get to be more of that. I was always against all in. I was like, no, just contend every year. And one year it'll work out. But after so many years of it not working out, you start to get impatient. I do anyway. So how do you feel about that, Jeff?
Here's the thing. After struggling through some of those would-be rebuilds and going through the quarterback carousel and dealing with the guys like, the Tim Rattays of the world and some of that stuff, I don't ever want to be in that spot again where we're just trying to figure out one position. I'd much rather be going to NFC Championship games and hoping to get a bounce one way or another. Because sometimes this game, like whether we choose to admit it or not, you can game plan all you want. Sometimes you need the ball to bounce a certain way just to you need that one little bit of luck, right? You need that one thing to break. And, maybe it's a call. Maybe it's a guy slips on a piece of grass, right? You need that one extra thing. And, it hasn't really broken our way the last couple of years, but, as long as we stay competitive and we're in there, the NFC is ripe for the taking. We can go in there and beat anybody in the NFC right now. I mean, the Eagles are tough, sure, but if we're healthy for that game, it's going to be that would be a very different contest. We'll put it that way. So I don't know. I'm not ready to tear it down. I'm not even ready to really consider that. It would take something pretty cataclysmic, I think, for that. But yeah, it's I don't know, man. I still have a lot of negative feelings from the post Jeff Garcia years.
Yeah, no, it was brutal, no doubt about it. And I hear you. It's not easy to pick a generational quarterback, right? They only typically come along once a generation.
Right.
It's not that easy. You got to be up there towards the top of the draft, if not the number 1 pick. That's not easy to do. And if you're doing that repeatedly, you're going to lose the fan base, obviously, and the TV and all that. Steve-O had an interesting fact where he said the LB coach from Atlanta was also the defensive coordinator for the Colts last year. There's another parallel that I was completely unaware of. So thank you for that, Steve-O.
What happens when you run too much cover 1 and cover 0 in late game situations when you just need to go ahead and run cover 4 and call it a day?
There you go. Tommy Huxley says Steve-O is Hackett 2.0. Ouch, that's a little mean.
Oh, come on now. Don't crush our guy Steve-O.
I know. He said we got Ward, CMC, and Hargrave. I think that's going all in. No, because they're all multi-year deals. I'm talking about when you go all in, you get like that 1 year rental. You know, that one guy or a couple. I mean, with the Rams, they got who they got. They got Von Miller, they got Sony Michel, who actually was
OBJ.
really instrumental when their guys were, and OBJ. Right. So like, you know, and they were all kind of like rentals. They weren't like long term. And it was like by doing it, they're like, hey, we're all in. We're either going to win it all or we're not. But like things were probably going to fall apart real quick after that because they had been going sort of like that for a few years. And I think it would take us a few years of doing that before we actually fell apart. But I'm starting to get ready to just, you know, shove those chips in, just go all in, baby. You know,
Look, we've got
no limit, hold them.
Here's the thing. I think we've got good young talent in a lot of places. And, you know, Drake Jackson was a guy we spent high draft capital on. He's going to come along on that defense. I think that's going to be a great fit, having him opposite of Bosa. You know, yeah, we lose Alshire here. I get it. That's fine. But you know what? You bring in Jair Brown. That's a great player. I really like Robert Beal, kid out of Georgia that we got late. That could be a practice squad guy or even a fast depth player that could be a rotational pass rusher for us. And Steve Wilkes likes to get after it a little bit more than Robert Saleh and DeMeco Ryans did. So don't be shocked to see us bringing 5 and 6 more frequently than we have in the past and letting the DBs cover the field. You know, we might see a little bit more of Hufanga coming off the edge, and he's dangerous when he does that. So that defense is going to hold its own for the next 3 to 4 years defensively. You know, that's probably a safe range to be in. As long as we get competent quarterback play, there's no reason for us to not be in contention for Super Bowls for the next few years. So
nice. We got Randy Daytona in the house, Tommy Huxley. Steve-O fired back. He said Huxley will be traded this year. So,
oh man,
after the Hackett comment, it's getting brutal out there. Huxley, Tommy said, Tommy Huxley, he's a performer. He's a guitarist. He's in a band and he travels and plays. And so I love it. He said Trey Lance looks awful. Now, the thing is that our defense is good. We don't have pads on. It's early. And Trey Lance looked good the first day of practice when he was playing with the ones, but then he's been playing with the twos. We talked about this earlier. I don't think you were here yet, but I was saying basically like, I think I titled the show something like defense wins championships, but it's like, you know, brutal on training camps because our defense is so deep and our offense isn't. You know, we got the best weapons group in the NFL, but one layer below those guys, it's not scrubs, but it's not good. It's not people who can separate and who can catch the ball really well and who you can count on. You know, so Trey Lance definitely looked bad yesterday and looked bad, although there were some drops yesterday. And I think there was a drop today as well, too. And basically what some people were saying was after he scrambled, he started to look better. So I still have a lot of hope for Trey Lance, but he definitely hasn't looked as good as I would hope any of the days. Even the day where he looked good on Wednesday, he threw a hospital ball to Ayuk. Everybody's like, oh, look at that high point. I'm like, dude, that looks like you get killed in the game doing that. And then he also threw one behind a guy, at least where it was a catch. But like I'm saying, not a great throw. And people are like, oh, you're a Lance fan. You can't be objective. I'm like, oh, yeah, I can. Just because I'm a fan doesn't mean I can't be honest or that I have to be biased about it. I'll hope for the future that it'll get better, but I'm not going to lie about the present, about what's going on. So Tommy, super humble. My comments are genius. Love it. That's
I got to say for Tommy, you know, playing the guitar, I tried to learn how to play the guitar, went through lessons the whole bit. And if I didn't see other people doing it successfully, I'd believe it was impossible. So congrats to you being able to play the guitar, sir. Well done.
There you go. Steve says your slang names are on point. I think he's talking to Tommy. Tommy always comes in and gives us grief, makes fun of us usually when he joins. Today he didn't. I think I guess he went after Steve-O instead of me. Usually I get the slings and arrows. Steve-O was my human shield today. Thank you, Steve-O, for taking those bullets and arrows for me. Appreciate it. Tom the Piper's son. Not sure what that one is. Do the Niners need a beam? Oh, he's talking. Oh, he's griefing me. So I'm a Warriors fan, and the Warriors played the Kings, and they had to light the beam thing, and so he actually pretended to be a Kings fan and was griefing me anytime I did a Warriors show. he was like, light the beam and da-da-da-da, Warriors are going to lose, da-da-da-da. And then it comes out he's a Pistons fan after all of that. So anyway, good shit on you, Randy. Good shit on you. That's awesome. But I know we were trying to try and keep it to like an hour 15. We're coming up on an hour 10. So did anybody have anything?
Playing the piano, so I think we're good. She's not turning into a pumpkin yet, so I think we're okay.
Oh, okay. Well, just just give me a sign or just say, "Hey, Ted, let's wrap it up," or you can do the private chat or whatever. I'm not really a stickler for all that kind of stuff, but we are having some fun here. I don't feel like we've got through everything. As far as Kinlaw's been good. Drake Jackson has looked good. McKivitz, not so hot. A lot of the sacks have come from the right side, as you can imagine. But I think Drake Jackson did beat Trent Williams a couple times, which is pretty impressive. He has that bend, as we know. I wouldn't call him a speed rusher like Austin Bryant, or we mentioned Robert Beal Jr. from Georgia, but he does have the bend, and he's a little bigger than those guys. And he's not slow. He's just not a speed rusher, I would say. And Clelin Ferrell's been doing well. The defense has been doing well. And guess what? We don't even have Bosa out there. Wait till Bosa shows up. It's going to be I'm thinking 85 Bears type of stuff, or maybe 2019 Niners first 8 games. Remember how we were in those first 8 games where we were on a historic pace before all the guys got hurt. All our defensive line depth basically got injured. It seemed like all in that Seahawks game that I was at. But anyway, I don't know. We'll see. And Quan Alexander, too, got injured. And DJ Jones was one. Robert Blair tore his ACL. Julian Taylor had played well in those first 8 games. Quan Alexander. And I think even Jaquiski Tart was injured quite a bit in the second half of that season. So it all kind of came together for the playoffs. We got the 1 seed, made it to the Super Bowl, but they were on a historic pace those first 8 games. Because people say, "Oh, we didn't start the season slow in 2019." I'm like, the offense did. The offense started so slow that we traded for Emmanuel Sanders. We traded a second and a third for Emmanuel Sanders. Yeah. That's how slow the offense started. So
that was wild.
Or at least the pass game. Little do we know it was just Jimmy G.
Jimmy won a lot of games for us. It's hard for me to hate on him. The guy was still under center, so he still has to get credit for the wins, even if we're going to peg him for the losses.
He did. And you know what I like to say about Jimmy G? He helped us to win when we were bad.
Yep.
He helped give us credibility. I'm pretty sure that's part of the reason that Richard Sherman signed here. Also, big FU to the Seahawks too. Oh, yeah. But part of it was it could have been any NFC West team though. So I think the reason why it was specifically us was Jimmy G. We drafted Bosa and we traded for D Ford, but those players could have pushed back if they weren't liking what we were doing. And I think Jimmy helped all that. I think it all helped. I just say that, he helped us when we were bad, but then when we got good, he kind of held us back just because of those fourth quarters of playoff games. There's few that are ever worse than what he's done there. Otherwise, he helped us to get to the playoffs in 2019. He had a bunch of fourth quarter comeback wins. I still can always dig on that though, too, and just say, well, a lot of times he got us out of the holes that he himself had dug, but he did get us out. So, and
you can always count on for 1 or 2 throws a game that you just face palm like this every week. And it's but then he'll also have 1 or 2 throws a game where you're like, wow, that was brilliant. Great work. And so that's the kind of stuff that always made me crazy as not just as a fan, but as somebody who coached quarterbacks and works a lot with quarterbacks. I'm looking at that and I'm like, Jimmy, please, just a little bit of consistency for the love of Christ.
Yeah. Just the head scratchers. And then, the ankles in 2020, where there was talk that he could have played and he didn't because there was nothing to play for. We might have made the playoffs, but we all knew we weren't going to go anywhere in the playoffs in 2020, which led me to believe that he could have played in the NFC Championship game. Clearly, I was wrong because he had to get that surgery in March and he just passed his physical a week ago. I was doing backflips because I'm finally, we know Jimmy G will not be back this season. So, yay. I know, because I was ready for him to go. I was a big defender of him for a long time, but I flipped. There's a big flip-flop that everybody, was upset with me about. Week 3 of 2021, after we played Green Bay, I was just like, we're never going to go any further than we can carry Jimmy luggage. That's where the luggage came from. Tommy, equal opportunity, making fun of things. He's calling the Pistons the Pistones. So making fun of his own team there. So that's what when he comes into the shows, usually there's something like that for me or my guests or folks. Blood and gold beam. Make it happen, Ted. You got Paul. I got no juice in this town. I'm still trying to get training camp tickets for the 5th and the 7th. I got 7 of the 9. But I thought the 5th, my wife was having a shower, but that's actually, she's having one tomorrow and one Sunday. And my childcare can be here Sunday. So I'm going to make Sundays. I'll go be there Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Wednesday's off. And then Thursday and Friday, I got tickets. But hopefully Saturday and the following Monday, the 5th and 7th, that's what I'm working on. Because I'm looking on StubHub, and they're like $150 for Saturday. And, I saw one for $65, and now they're like $75, $80 for Monday. I'm like, oh, man, I can't do it for a $10 ticket. Something about it. And also I don't have a lot of money right now, disposable, trying to get this stuff off the ground and everything. So I don't know. We'll see.
But Flowery Branch for the Falcons, because I live here in Atlanta, and so I'm about 40 minutes from Flowery Branch, and Bijan Robinson looks like the absolute truth, because I do a lot of college scouting. So a big part of what I do for fantasy football is I play in dynasty leagues, so I'm always scouting incoming rookies, right? And with a lot of my background with working with a Division I program, I spent a lot of time with scouts. I would sit there and we'd break down film. I got to just listen to those guys and see how they break down film, and you start to learn a lot about football very quickly. And I'll tell you, now it's like my big thing is I like to go and I like to break down my own players, do all my own grading, and Bijan is a whole nother animal. I cannot wait to go see that guy live and in person. I'm probably not going to go to a preseason game, but I'm trying to get some tickets to go to camp and see what I can see.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. I saw him in a graphic today with McCaffrey and Eckler as like top 3 fantasy pick for already, and he hasn't even played it down. So good for Bijan to be in that consideration. He said blood and gold beam. He said red and gold isn't badass. He said, well, guitar is the hardest instrument. It was a labor of love. I was obsessed, played 16 hours a day in one day. There you go. Takes that kind of dedication to be great. 10,000 hours, they say, right, to become an expert. He said just subbed and unsubbed Tommy. That's Steve-O. With how many accounts, Steve-O? Because Steve-O has a bunch of accounts. So like your subs can vary greatly if Steve-O's in favor of you for a day or not. You can see wild fluctuations based on Steve-O and his accounts. Oh boy! All right, I'll leave that one alone. It's getting a little raunchy, and they're going back. Steve-O said, Steve-O said he played the guitar as a kid. Not me, I know. All right.
I think that was that a Billy Madison reference I just saw with the not me, but a guy I know. They got it on.
Could be, and then I know what this one's about. It's I think that flute that he was talking about earlier. And when people say like, "Oh, you're getting old, your eyes go," or "My back's bad," I'm like, "Yeah." They say that's the second thing to go. So. Steve says Jimmy could have 4 rings. Well, he's got 2 with the Patriots, but I don't count him because he didn't throw a single pass in either of those 2 games. Just like people say Steve Young has 3 rings. I'm like, no, Steve Young only has 1. So and Steve Young did a lot more for our rings, for Montana's rings, than Jimmy did for Brady's. I mean, Steve played in some of those playoff games that kept us in contention.
And he had to play really well too.
Yeah. So I mean, I maybe give Steve partial credit, but not Jimbo. And he's not going to win with the Raiders. I can just tell you that right now. Everyone's like, oh, he's going to get him to the playoffs. I'm like, not unless he plays defense, yo.
The Raiders look like a team to me that is 1 or 2 injuries away from firing everybody and blowing the whole thing up again. Because they're an old roster. You got Jimmy there. Hey, look, he's won a lot of games for us, but couldn't stay healthy. That's always been his MO. And Josh McDaniels, this is his second tour as an NFL head coach now, and the first one didn't end well, and now this one looks like the engines are on fire and the plane is pointing at the ground. So it hasn't crashed and burned yet, but it doesn't look good. So they
Well, I
better get
mean,
their kids ready.
I predicted the Raiders would be, the place where Jimmy would go because they had all these great weapons on offense, and then all of a sudden they shipped Waller. They got Renfro on the trading block. Josh Jacobs doesn't want to play on the tag. Devontae Adams is clearly unhappy there too. Yeah, you could see things going sideways. And in fact, there was somebody talking about Jimmy G was talking about like how great it is in Vegas and how everybody's so nice and not. He didn't say specifically not like the Bay Area, but he's like, I haven't experienced this ever or in a long time. Something to the effect of like it didn't happen in San Francisco. And I'm just like, yeah, I wonder how long till they flip flop on Jimmy. I said over under. I'm saying trade deadline.
Ted, there's more.
Completely out of love.
There's more escorts per capita in Vegas than there is anywhere else in the world, I think. So that's why everyone's so dang nice to Jimmy there.
They're like cha-ching. The gravy train is rolled into town, folks.
Yep, absolutely.
Get it while it's hot. Get it while it's hot. Oh, that's funny. Let's see. They're just arguing. But can you imagine if they did right? Maybe they didn't, but you. All right. Oh, yeah, Billy Madison. Billy Past Third Grade is my favorite song.
I'm just glad I didn't miss the reference. I'm usually pretty quick to catch those.
Yeah. See here. Yeah, that was that joke, right? What was long and hard on Ted? The third grade. I heard Jimmy, Lamar, and Mahomes were faking it like Huxley. Oh, come on, guys. All right, let it go.
What's our rating? Are we at PG-13 now, or do we have
I set it for adults. I set it, so that we can cuss and stuff. But I try not to as much as possible. A few slipped out today. I never begrudge anybody. I'd rather be passionate and have them fly out than like just be like all buttoned up and boring. Yeah. So, Steve-O said I forgot Ted kid named Steve-O. I have a son named Ford who just turned 3.5 on the 23rd, and then we're expecting of July, and then we're expecting another son on September 23rd, and his name will be Andrew, not Steve-O. Sorry, Steve-O.
Congratulations.
Maybe I can get Steve-O as the middle name though. Just we'll see.
Gotta get Mama to sign off on that one, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because Ford is actually a riff on the fourth, so I definitely got my way with the first name. So I just was like, whatever you want. Anytime you get one name when they're carrying, I think you're lucky. I got
they do all the
work, or at least my part was fun, right? I mean, and then they have to do the hard work.
Well, I mean, you see, my last name's DiMatteo, right? I mean, I'm pretty Italian, second generation actually. My grandparents came over on the boat, so we had our now 4-year-old son, and I wanted to name him Enzo Anthony. Okay, really legit Italian name. And my wife looked at me and she said, "I don't want him springing at me in a velour tracksuit with gold chains on." I said,
is that Italian or is that Russian mafia?
I don't even know, but she hit me with that, and I said, "Okay, so Enzo's out." So she gave me Anthony as the middle name, but yeah. So,
there you go, Anthony.
Yeah.
Randy says jet into poop. Maybe. I think. Not sure what that is. I see Adams traded after they did his key. Oh, did we talk about Jalen Ramsey? We talked about it backstage.
We did talk about it backstage. 6 to 8 weeks on the meniscus.
No, I think it's more than that. They came out and they said December.
Oh.
Well, yeah, they said 6 to 8. Was it 6 to 8 months? No, is that 6? No, that's not 6 months.
Well, they said they missed 6 to 8 weeks of the regular season. So I'd have to get my
right.
And figure that out.
And the regular season's about 7 weeks away.
Right.
So, he got the meniscus repair, very similar to what Raheem Mostert got, except for Mostert got his the second week of the season compared to 7 weeks before the season. So he could be back for the stretch run in the playoffs. We'll see. But sad to see that. I don't really care for Dolphins fans. There's been a lot of animosity between us and them. Once they got McDaniel, they thought they were better than us. And so, they had some rude people on Spaces, talking a lot of trash before the game, and then after the game they like blocked us and didn't it was just not great, not great. But I like their team other than Ramsey being hurt, and I just don't trust Tua to stay healthy because of his concussions. Really concern me because they're not helmet to helmet; they're ragdoll helmet to the turf or to the grass. And I guess he gained some weight, so that seems like it'll help. So he's not so easy to throw around. But I think part of it is technique of the way he gets tackled. I just worry about him. I don't think he'll make it to the season. And then they got Mike White, who's decent backup, but I don't think he's really starter material. So we'll see. Have you done much analysis on the AFC East?
Yeah, actually, so quite a bit. So Tua has actually done a lot of martial arts work in the off season. Judo specifically, trying to keep himself from getting kind of tossed around so easily, can help his balance and things like that. Now, a lot of quarterbacks will actually get into martial arts for the core workout. But to think that it's going to prevent headaches, migraines and concussions and all this other stuff is kind of foolish. I don't think that's going to be a thing. As long as he can stay upright, he's going to be excellent. And it's hard in that offense to not get the ball to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and, not have the numbers just explode off the page. Mike White is the number 2. Fun fact, I actually had him graded ahead of Sam Darnold in that draft class.
Wow.
So I liked Mike White more than Sam Darnold. I just did not like Sam Darnold at all. I had both those guys as mid-round draft picks. And
I still don't like Sam Darnold. So I'm like
So Randy wants to know if I know any Mikes in New Jersey. I know a couple of Mikes in New Jersey, but not Mike DiMatteo's, if that's what you're asking. I'm originally from Jersey, so I know a couple of Mikes.
There you go. Jersey Mike. But
Jersey Mike's.
You get some subs. I don't know. I think he was. Knowing Randy, that is probably what he was doing there. They're just saying hi. Randy did say Devontae to the Jets. There's some talk. That's where he wants to go team back up with. Can you imagine that? They got him, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, all those. Even Lazard is a real good receiver. All those tight ends. They got 3 real solid tight ends. I mean, talk about an embarrassment of riches for old Aaron Rodgers. That'd be wild.
Yeah, Devontae to the Jets.
Oh, and I heard. Did you hear Dalvin Cook to the Jets too? Because originally they were saying Dalvin Cook to the Dolphins, but it sounds like that stalled out. Maybe he might go to the Jets too.
Well, they made a pretty minimal. So here's the deal. So Dolphins made a very minimal offer to Dalvin, and apparently they're not coming off that number. And Dalvin just said, "I'm not playing for that period." So the Dolphins are off the radar. The Jets are really, if they're in it, they're bidding against themselves at this point. And with Rodgers reworking his deal to free up some cap space and all this kind of stuff, they can find that extra $1 million they've been separated by to get Dalvin Cook in there. Now, if they're going out of their way to get Cook, there's a few things that says. Breece Hall, not ready. His ACL recovery probably isn't as clean as we want it to be. And then Izzy Abakanda, the rookie running back they got from Pitt, isn't materializing the way they liked. And then they also still don't love Michael Carter. So a lot at play there for the Jets. But here's the thing. Devontae Adams, not gonna happen. He's probably not getting traded either. It's a $56 million cap hit of dead money if they move him this year. So any pipe dreams of that guy getting moved require a complete contract rework if that's going to happen.
There you go. Okay. So yeah, I mean, you can only have so many superstars, no doubt. Steve-O, I talked about some of his accounts here. Some are allegedly Steve-O with the dog. This is Hamilton Talks Ball. There's a bunny rabbit, but that little dog there, that's my dog. His name's Hamilton, a.k.a. Hambone. He's a husky corgi yellow lab Samoyed mix. Chihuahua, too. He's got blue eyes. Really cool dog. Love him. Angel dog. Like, we got him, and then we got pregnant after trying for years. So I credit Hamilton with our fertility. I think my wife saw that I could take care of a dog, and it gave her some hope that I might not screw it up too badly with a child. So it's funny how that works.
Mine are both accidents.
Everybody's just saying hi. Yeah. You rang. Quote, isn't that Shaq who says you rang? When he's talking about the tall guy from the Sixers. Oh, he's not there anymore. But who's the really tall guy who's in the action movie, the John Wick movie? John Wick. Yeah, yeah.
Boban isn't that like
Boban. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And whenever Shaq talked about it, he'd be like, "You rhyme," And I think that's from.
He reminds me of George Murison. I mean, I know you're old enough to remember who George Murison was.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
yeah, it's Boban. Every time I see him on TV, yeah, it's I think of George Murison.
No doubt, no doubt. That it's Mike D. This is a Beastie Boys. Then we're going back to that, right?
Yeah. He's trying to get me again. No, he got me once.
Said Brendan Cooks. I heard Dalvin to New Orleans. Wow, that'd be pretty scary because didn't they get Jamal Murray back? And they got Kamara, but do they have Kamara? Isn't Kamara going to get suspended here before the season?
So strong chance Kamara's
as a fantasy guy, you guys must be talking about that.
Yeah, there's a better than average chance he's missing at least 4 games. Right now, the smart money's on 6, but Jamal Williams goes there, signs the free agent deal, obviously led the league in rushing touchdowns last year, but they drafted Kendre Miller, and they really like him. They got him off the PUP early. He actually started camp on the PUP. He was there for like 2 days, and they've already got him off, and they really like what they're seeing from him early on. So the expectation is that those 3 guys are kind of the crowd at running back. And Dalvin probably, if New Orleans is getting leaked, it's probably an agent thing where he's trying to get that additional money squeezed out of the Jets. And so he wants to make it seem like some other teams are involved. So got to keep an eye on those leaks.
Yeah. Pump up that trade value or the free agency value, if you will.
Yep. Get it done here.
Some interest.
Yeah.
It's a smart move. What about Dalvin Cook to the Niners? I mean, I know he wants to be the number 1 guy and we got CMC, but if he would take a secondary role, I know we're stacked at running back too, but like we have no one else like CMC if he goes down who can catch. I mean, I guess we kind of have Debo. Gotta never forget that Debo is kind of that same wide back, but I don't know. I just feel like as many of these positionless players as we can have, stack him up if he's not super expensive. And I guess it would also have to be probably a 1-year deal.
Give me Kareem Hunt for half the money.
There you go. But Kareem Hunt has character issues. I don't think we would sign Kareem Hunt because of his legal.
Yeah, it's been a few years. I mean, I don't know if that would follow or not, but maybe it does. I mean, I don't know that we need a running back. That's probably not an area we need to go out of our way to find more players. But like Dalvin Cook with the 49ers, I look at that. Cook really struggled in the back half of last year creating any new yards. So basically, he was getting what was blocked up, but he wasn't getting anything after contact, and he wasn't able to create. So if you can't create on your own as a running back, you've worn out your usefulness, unfortunately. And you start getting into a position where, hey, if I can only get you 4 yards and you're getting tackled on first contact, you're useless. Like guys like McCaffrey and Mitchell, like they can make guys miss. McCaffrey will make you miss in a phone booth. And, Mitchell, while he's not that same level of agility, he's not far off from what Dalvin Cook is today. I'd rather just keep Eli Mitchell on the roster because he's going to be way cheaper.
There you go. And Mitchell also, I'm not going to say trucks people, but he runs big for a smaller back.
Right.
So there's that, no doubt. I just wonder how much of that with Dalvin Cook was his shoulder, right? Didn't he have it separated and all that, and he just got it surgically repaired? I wonder if that would help. I don't know. Who knows? You think he's just washed, or at least on the downside?
Well, I do a lot of, I study running back workload, and I try to identify when guys are going to fall off. And try to see, okay, well, when's a guy going to really fall off the side of the earth? And really, Dalvin Cook's got about 1 more kind of high volume season left in him. And, the model I use, accurately has predicted a handful of players, including Zeke, dropping off the side of the earth last year. And so when I look at players like this year, Derrick Henry's a guy I'm out on completely. Everybody loves King Henry, but I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm going to hard pass that guy and let somebody else fall in that grenade. You start looking at this and you say, all right, well, what's he got in the tank? He's been used and abused for 4, 5, 6 years now. And you got to say, time to pass. Like the name value is suddenly pumping your contract up more than your production is. And Dalvin Cook's just not better than Eli Mitchell right now.
What about the receiving though?
I'd say
because he is like that.
Yeah, he's better.
He is kind of like Kamara or CMC or, as far as he can run routes, he can line up in the slot. He's pretty versatile, right?
Yeah,
but you're just saying it's not worth it.
I'm not for what we're gonna have to pay him. That's the thing. Is I always kind of look at it. For me, it's an ROI thing, right? Trying to think like a GM. And
It's
so
a
I look
hard
at that.
cap league.
Yeah, right. And so I stare
You
at
don't
that.
have to be. You don't have to be. You don't have to be better to be a better value. I always say.
Right. If I can get 90% of your productivity at half of your price, then I'm winning.
Win-win. No brainer. Um, Randy says, "Are we sending Allen back to the Bengals for goodies? Do we even have space for more goodies at this point? We already had to give up free picks because we have too many. Um, we always need more goodies because we can get draft picks, right? And then you can use those as needed during the season or during the draft to acquire things if you have an injury that's unexpected. I just don't think the Bengals are going to trade to get Brandon Allen.
Allen's going to be the last guy we cut. When we're cutting to 53, if he gets cut, he's the last guy. He's the guy that gets us to 53. They're going to ride him through the entire preseason process to keep our guys fresh and to just prevent guys from taking reps they don't have to. And so I would expect that we'll be sitting on Brandon Allen for just a second.
Maybe that's the way we've been looking at it the wrong way, that Kyle isn't giving Brandon Allen the reps for him to win a role. It's just to keep, Trey and Darnold from, unnecessary chances of getting injured when he already knows that one of them is going to be quarterback 2 already. And Purdy is arguably quarterback 1 if he can stay healthy. One thing I've been saying about Purdy and anyone who wins the job week 1 is that assignment week 1 in Pittsburgh is no peach, where you got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith coming off the edges against Colton McKivitz in his first start ever at right tackle in the NFL. You could win that job and end up losing not only the game, but maybe losing the job because looking bad or getting injured by getting creamed by those guys in a hostile, whatever they're calling that stadium. I call it Heinz Stadium still.
Yeah, I it's not Heinz anymore, but it's something like I call it Heinz also. So yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's got some terrible name. So Steve says, good show. ECRG had Jesse Sapolu on yesterday. Yeah. And they had Spencer Burford on the week before. Sapolu is a great cat. I'd love to have any ex-49er on, especially one from the glory days. But to get a current player like during the season, that's really difficult to do. I guess one of the guys who was on is this guy named Terradome. And his cousin is an agent. I don't know if he's Burford's agent or if he knows Burford's agent or whatever. But Terradome's cousin hooked that up, is what is my understanding. Because, like I said, that's pretty unusual for active roster players to do shows during even off season, even during camp. I guess camp technically hadn't started a week ago Thursday, so maybe that's why it was just before camp. But it still was a huge get, and great. Jess does great stuff. She was on earlier to say hi. JSAP.
Jesse Sapolo.
That is. Oh, Jesse Sapolo. Thank you.
I got you, Randy. I'm right there. I'm right there with you.
There you go. So I remember we were on the panel. You gave a prediction for the season. Can I get you to, and if it's changed, feel free to change it. But what's your prediction for the season for the 49ers, Chad?
I've got us at 11 wins, and I think that's enough to win the division. Seattle's going to be a good team. They're going to make the playoffs this year, and it could be a situation where we both have 11 wins, but we have the tiebreak. I think we can beat them head to head, but it's going to be a tough season. We've got to get through Pittsburgh. That's going to be a tough one. Really underrated team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on in the AFC North over there. But if we can win that game, we're going to be rolling early. That's going to be really pivotal, and it sucks when you have to put that right there at the beginning. But hey, give me the 11 wins, get us to the playoffs. It's going to be enough. We can go ahead and march through a lot of the playoffs as long as we get there.
There you go. I was just laughing at this comment. Randy pumped me up. He said Ted's a pro, and here's Tommy to bust me back down. Me, Ted. I had a lot of those type of nicknames. Me, Ted. I won't go through some of them. Some of them are a little bit raunchy. But there's so many words that have Ted in them, and so they can become nicknames because of that. But Meat Ted was a funny one because I'm a kind of a meathead. I get it. Steve said that guy Pterodome, like you didn't argue over QV. Yeah, we were on East Coast Red and Gold together, and he's a big Purdy fan, and I'm a big Lance fan, and there was some stuff came up around, I guess it was ESPN put Sam Darnold at QB2 on the depth chart, and this was a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, there is no official depth chart. This is just people. And also I was saying, if they have Brock Purdy at number 1, that's invalid too, because Brock hadn't been cleared to play at that point. So like you can't be QB1 if you can't play.
It's all smoke.
All smoke. And so I was like, oh, well, Pterodome, that they said the same things I said earlier. They said Mac Jones at number 3. They said Trey Lance would be traded during the 2023 draft. And then we got into it, and he was like yelling and wagging his finger, and it was some good must-see TV. I clipped it out. I don't know if it's I don't think it's in my YouTube, because it was like I clipped it from their show, and I didn't have it wasn't in my StreamYard, and it wasn't my YouTube, so I couldn't make a short of it. But it's in my timeline. If you search Pterodome and ESPN, I think I misspelled it too. I think I spelled it EPSN instead of ESPN.
Is this you and Dan going? You and Dan?
Oh yeah, it was like that, but longer. They were like shoveling coal on the fire, and I was because actually, for those who don't know. And that one is on. I did find a way to get that one on YouTube, because I basically I have this little light over here, and part of it has a phone clip. So I clipped the phone and recorded the show, and then I used InShot to crop it, and then uploaded it. So it's not the highest video quality, but there's definitely one of me arguing where Jeff was on the panel with me, and there's this guy Dan Mater, who we're still trying to work out a time to get together and talk again more. But I mean, it's harder now because it's starting to look like, I'm not going to say Lance is a bust, because I would never say that, but it definitely is looking like he's not going to get much of a chance so far to do it. But again, we'll see. I'll stick to my guns for at least now. But yeah, so I've had a couple of those recently. And there's a few people I work with that are always like, we need more of that Ted on here, the timeline Ted, the toxic, argumentative. Because on the timeline, I'm like Mr. Receipts, Mr. Gotchas. Mm-hmm. And on my shows, I try to be like, hey, I want people to want to come back. I don't want to be like that. I want to be respectful, but then, sometimes things escalate, and you're just like, and all of a sudden, yeah. So I just needed some Lance haters or Jimmy G fans to come on, then the fireworks go on. It's good
because
stuff.
Of all of my fantasy work, I try to separate my analysis from my fandom. Right. So like when Brock Purdy's under center, I love Brock Purdy. If Trey Lance is under center, I love Trey Lance. I will I'll ride or die with whoever we've got going. Right. But it's like for fantasy, if you're like, well, hey, what's your fantasy take on that? It's like the fandom shuts off and the fantasy analysis kicks on. It's two very different mentalities. So it's like you'll catch me in two different modes. Like here, hey, we're talking Niners. But if we go on a fantasy show, the whole mood and attitude changes where I'm like, well, no, this is what I want. This is where we're
No, yeah. And the more you do this, the more unbiased you get. And you got to, I have Rams fans on, and I have Seahawks fans on, and I have Eagles fans on, and Cowboys fans. And so you can't be a super homer about stuff, or they're just going to be like, dude, why'd you have me on if you're just going to be ridiculous about stuff? So it's caused me to be more open-minded and unbiased about stuff, for sure. I think you can separate fandom from analysis. And that's what I always strive to do. No doubt about it. They were saying that Meathead was a meatball reference. They said, yeah, meatballs. Said Ted cussed multiple times. I don't think I cussed. I think I said BS. I don't think I cussed.
Ted,
I really try not to.
You probably cussed.
Especially when I'm like that, I try to not cuss, because I feel like that's when the worst time to cuss is when your face is red and you're like talking, and I'm like talking like this into my microphone. That's when it's like it's on.
you're so angry. Your glasses are fogged up. You're just so enraged. No, I get you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's a lot of filth being thrown around. Well, and he called me Hee Haw. There was some thing he had posted before the show about Hee Haw, where he's like, "Oh, these people, some of these content creators are so negative." Because I was saying, Brock Purdy, he hasn't been cleared to play, and he may never be the same player he was in 2022 again. And I'm not saying I want that. I'm not saying I think it's likely. I'm just saying when you have a major injury, especially like an ACL or like this UCL on your arm, you can be 100% healed physically, and you can have mental scars from it. So it's and sophomore slumps are a real thing, even if you're 100% healthy. So yeah. And we all saw with Jimmy G, the 5-0, and then was never the same after the ACL. So I just I hope he's better. I hope he has better arm strength and everything. But also, I think I saw a look. Maybe is your wife?
Oh, sorry. No, I heard something out, and I've got my office here has a little door that goes out to the hallway, and I heard something in the hallway. It could have been one of the dogs, could have been a kid.
It's something.
No
it's been an hour 45, so we went way over the hour.
I'm not on Sam Darnold's level yet.
Sixth Sense Sammy. See specters and dead people.
Yeah.
Oh man,
we gotta call the Ghostbusters on that one. Get Dan Aykroyd out here to take care of it.
Right. He went there. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, I think it was a good time to wrap. We've had a great show. Thanks for coming on, Jeff. We'll definitely have to do it again. If you want to come back on here, you're always welcome. If you ever want me to be a guest on your show too, sure. Whatever makes the most sense. I don't want to hog you all to my channel, but anyway, I really appreciate it. I'll tell everybody, everything about you again. Obviously, you're at NFL_ DiMatteo on Twitter. And then at Gridiron Rating, that's on Twitter, and then also YouTube, and then gridironratings.com as well. You have your own website.
Relaunching the site, relaunching the YouTube channel. Got some stuff coming, this fall here. I'm at the mercy of some web devs because I'm just not good enough to build my own stuff, unfortunately. And so as soon as those guys are done building out the site information, all the rankings and all the content that I've been working on all fall or all summer rather is going to push out. And so we'll have some really cool stuff. And then in the spring, we're going to have some really interesting stuff with rookie draft guides, get you ready for the draft. It's going to come from an NFL perspective as well as having a fantasy spin. So some cool stuff to look forward to there. But yeah, I mean, feel free to, hit me up on Twitter. I'm always happy to have a conversation, whether you want to talk fantasy, you want to talk Niners, whatever. It's, I love interacting with folks. So hit me up, and yeah, I'd love to come back on anytime. And, once I get the channel relaunched, we'll definitely get you on, and we'll talk some Niners and, maybe hit a few other NFC West teams too, so we can kind of smash on the Sea Chickens a little bit and some of these other teams.
Outstanding. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate it. I'll just say have a great weekend and peace, and go Niners.
See you, Ted.